Clash at the Castle 2024 from the OVO Hydro featured a couple of pretty surprising things that I was not expecting, and a whole lot of great matches from great talent. I did a video recently, and if you haven't checked out the video, I'm going to leave a link to it at the end of this one that I want y'all to check out, where I'm basically analyzing WWE's pay-per-view strategy and comparing it to AEW's, with WWE having shorter shows with less matches, but they're longer, versus AEW having these really long pay-per-views with tons of matches. And I'm very honest and very, unbiased in that video, because there's pros and cons to both, right? And I'm starting that up not just to promote that video, but to say that this pay-per-view was another one in the line of WWE shows, which are probably going to be this way from now on. As long as it's going to be Triple H, Nick Khan, and this group under Endeavor, we're probably not going to get any changes to this style for quite some time. Although, you never know. 5 matches. 2 of them went over 20 minutes. And, some of them should have. And I feel like the ones that didn't are probably the ones that should not have. And I'll explain why. I'll explain why in my video here. So let me start off with the opener, which is Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles' I Quit match for the Undisputed WWE Championship. Now, when they brought out Cody's mom and they showed her in the front row, I thought, that's very unusual for his mom to see one of his matches overseas. If it was in America, okay, but overseas. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's just he took his mom on a vacation. Maybe Cody and his mom traveled Scotland. You want to do that with your mom. Like, if you're this rich, famous wrestler who's also a world champion, you would want to take your mom with you overseas. Like, when is she going to ever be able to do that again? And that's cool. But in the back of my head, guys, I was like, is AJ going to, grab her and force Cody into saying I quit by threatening to hurt her? And I thought they'd do that finish, which was done before a long time ago in 1999 on Raw between Triple H and The Rock. The corporation kidnapped China, and Triple H freaked out and said, I quit, without actually being put in a move. And it was a brilliant way to get out of it without hurting Triple H's credibility. He didn't want his girl to get hurt. Then, of course, she hit him in the balls and turned on him. But, hey, that's how it was back then. I thought we were going to get that finish, but no. AJ Styles did not win. Cody Rhodes once again defeats him. The finish was basically really similar to what they did with Christian and Adam Copeland for the TNT title in Toronto, where he's basically handcuffed and Cody was about to hit AJ, but AJ said I quit. He was gonna hit him with the steps, and then of course after the match, the mom was like, hit him anyways, and then he did. The whole thing was kind of done to give AJ one last shot at Cody, as well as to stretch the feud out a little bit before we get to the next program, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But with Cody. Again, I know the AEW fans, and you know this. The AEW fans are going to be like, oh, but when AEW copies the finish from WWE, the WWE fans always call them copycats. What about this? Yeah, I mean, the reality is, yes, this is a finish AEW did about 2 months ago. Yes, this is a finish AEW did, but the reality is wrestling always copies itself. So it is what it is. Feel free to steal from each other. It doesn't matter. Just do it in a new twist. So after the match, Solo Tangaloa attacked Cody. He is saved by Randy Orton, who had on his wrestling tights even though he wasn't booked on the show. That popped me. And Kevin Owens. So I'm sure we're going to get like a 6-man match either on SmackDown or on the next pay-per-view. I talked about this earlier in the year, but the plan is to do a Cody Rhodes, a Randy Orton feud at some point this year. I talked about it in a previous video, and I made a tweet about it a while ago. But yes, Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton is happening, and this feud with the Bloodline could end up sort of leading into that. So we'll see where that goes. Possibly even for SummerSlam, that could work. So, again, I'm not surprised. The question is, what do you do with AJ? Leave a comment down below. Let me know who you would book AJ with. He already lost to LA Knight, so Who else on the roster would he be? You know what? I don't know. He's a heel, but Carmelo Hayes and AJ would be a good one. You know, that could work. Do you send AJ to NXT to work with the young talent for a few months? They could do that as well. Like there's a lot of things they could do with AJ, man. He's infinitely talented, but he's not going to challenge for the title for a while. So then we had the three-way women's tag team title match, which was Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark versus Alba Fire and Isla Dawn versus Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. I did not expect to see Bianca and Jade. I did not expect them to lose the titles this soon, but if there was a way they would lose it, it would be in a match where they don't get pinned. That's exactly what happened. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, who are from Glasgow, Scotland, so it's a hometown crowd, and I'll talk about the crowd here in a minute. They did win the titles by pinning Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. I think it was Zoe they pinned, but I don't really remember. And it was fine for what it was. Jade Cargill's getting a lot better. She did this classic, like a new version of something old. There was a spot where they were trying to do like a double chicken wing, like almost like a key lock on her arms. And she went back and then like used her strength to kind of flip both of them over. It was really cool. That is a classic spot that Andre the Giant used to do back in the day in like the 70s and early 80s. They would often do handicap matches with Andre against two guys or even three guys, jobbers of course. And they would put him in that move and he would just like push his arms forward and they'd fly back. You know, and that's a classic. That's like classic. If you're an old school wrestling fan, you know that's classic shit. Jade obviously had more athleticism because she bent all the way back and did it. So that was something I remember from the match. Where do we go from here? I'm thinking Bianca and Jade will win the titles back with a clean pinfall on Alba and Isla very soon. Maybe on the next television or maybe at Money in the Bank. That's the next pay-per-view. We'll see. Sami Zayn versus Chad Gable. And let me talk about the crowd. This crowd was very much like the crowd in Lyon, France. Very loud. They were singing. They were into everything. And look, I said this in my review for Backlash France. Yes, it did get on my nerves near the end of that pay-per-view. However, I would rather have a crowd like that than a dead crowd at any wrestling show. And so, you know, after I said that, I kind of thought about it more and more, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have said that in the review, even though I was being honest with you guys. I was being very truthful. And the truth is that they were kind of overdoing it by the end, but I felt like on that show, they helped make that show super memorable. And this crowd was similar. I actually liked it a bit more here. I'm not sure why. There were some chants that I just could not make out. Whereas with the French show, they were chanting in French a lot of the time. So that's something that, obviously, if you speak French, you would be able to really get it. Anyways, Sami Zayn, Chad Gable. Again, I thought for sure this would be the show that Chad would win because he just hasn't been successful against Sami at all in months. And I thought this might have been the show that you know, maybe Otis made his decision. And in a way, he sort of did. Now, are they going to keep this going? It looks like they're going to probably transition Chad into a direct feud with Otis. Obviously, the Chad Gable story with Maxine Dupree and Otis is completely like soap opera, WWE stuff, which I like. I actually think it works because the Bloodline was soap opera. You know, it really was. And there's nothing wrong with having melodrama. And so in the story here, you know, for the past few weeks, Chad has been telling Otis, do the right thing. Because, you know, previously he's made mistakes. On this show, what wound up happening is they're on the outside, and Sami is working with Chad. And then at one point, Otis is teasing hitting Sami. He was like up against the steps. But he wound up... Well, I'm getting there, actually. Hold on. So, Chad Gable flips forward and accidentally, like, chop blocks Maxine. And she goes down. And, of course, earlier in the match, he's, like, yelling at her and berating her. And so there comes a point where Chad is telling him to hit Sami. Sami's down, like, you know, in the corner. And Otis, instead of hitting Sami, grabs Maxine and carries her to the back. Now, if you're an old school wrestling fan, you're going to get this reference. This was like a 2024 version of George the Animal Steel and Miss Elizabeth. You know what I'm talking about, right? The big, monster brute and the petite, woman who's innocent. Maxine ain't as innocent as Miss Elizabeth was, but she ain't that innocent. But still, she's the damsel in distress here with the big monster doing the right thing, carrying her away, which allowed Sami Zayn to pin Chad Gable afterward, hitting the haluva kick. So, Chad, they had a long shot of Chad in the ring, just beside himself, because at this point he probably realizes he ain't getting another shot. So he's probably going to, because this has been rumored for a while, he's probably going to start a new stable, a new Alpha Academy. There were rumors of Jason Jordan, but I think the Creed brothers, I think those are the guys that are going to end up being his new team. And they'll probably end up feuding with Otis and Tozawa and maybe even Sami in a six-man or just tag matches. Whatever they decide to do. So there you go. I don't know if Chad can get his win back. Maybe what they could do is they do the six-man, Chad beats Sami, and that leads to him getting one more shot. But it's kind of like the AJ thing. When the babyface beats the heel like 2 or 3 shows in a row, you know what I mean? It's very hard to come back from that. You know what I mean? And it wasn't technically in a row because the Cody thing, he had the Logan match in between the other AJ match, but still. Piper Niven and Bayley, this was actually really good. Piper Niven is one of those, don't judge a book by its cover. She's a big woman. I'm not going to insult her and take the low road on this. She's a large woman, right? She's a big girl. And but she's so athletic. She's incredible. She was doing bumps here. And her body, she knows how to take these bumps where her body, sort of like Keith Lee. Remember Keith Lee? He's still around, but he's been hurt for a while. Keith Lee would take these bumps where even though they were big, they were cruiserweight bumps, right? That is Piper Niven. I think Piper Niven's an underrated talent. That being said, Bayley is red hot right now. And she needs a longer title run, so she wins the match. Dropping her on her neck, man, it was nasty, but it was good. And Piper Niven was okay. Again, she's a great worker, and she was folded backwards. When it comes to big women workers, larger women, Piper Niven is great. I mean, I still think that the greatest two are probably Aja Kong. Well, you know what? It's probably Awesome Kong, Aja Kong, Bull Nakano, I would count. Maybe Rhea Ripley, because she's really thick, but she's not big in the same way. Because they have big man workers like Vader, who are super nimble. That's how I feel about Piper Niven. So the main event, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest. Okay. So the story here was the Judgment Day was banned from the ring. They couldn't do anything. And Drew McIntyre, in his head, probably thought, it's Scotland. This is my time. There's no way CM Punk's going to screw me because he has to fly all the way out here. Why would he do that? Well, hate to break it to you. So, first of all, the match was good. The match was really, really good. There was a spot that made everybody kind of queasy where Priest went for a big boot and then sort of flipped up and got his other leg caught in the top rope. Now, I've seen this spot done before. The announcers and the commentators were really putting it over as being something gruesome and disgusting. Dude, we've seen way more gruesome things than that. When Sid Vicious broke his leg in WCW, that was way more vicious than this. However, it didn't look so great. However, I knew he was okay because I've seen that bump done before. I've seen guys tie their legs to the top rope. It's a quick and easy thing to, well, maybe not easy, but it can be done if you practice it safely. But the reason why this one looked so, nasty is because of how big Damian Priest is. Here's another example, both Priest and Drew. Two guys that are big men. These are large, 250 tall men, moving incredibly agile. And you kind of have to be able to be agile to survive in wrestling nowadays, because wrestling's become so much more athletic than it used to be. But they had a great match. And look, I really thought I thought that Drew was going to win here, and I'll tell you why. I swear, what I thought they were going to do is because Drew didn't beat Roman at the last Clash of the Castle, this was the makeup show to get him to re-sign, right? And I thought that he was going to win here and that Punk was going to screw him at SummerSlam, right? That's what I thought. I thought Gunther was getting the title at SummerSlam after Punk screws Drew. That's not what they're going to do, apparently, because Punk screwed Drew here. So what happened was the referee got knocked down. And by the way, this ref, oh boy, this ref took a bump. There are people who I've seen wrestle on Rampage and Collision, not like well-known wrestlers. I mean like some of the ones that get brought up to be jobbers that AEW finds locally, who have taken bumps that look more fake than what this referee took. Dude, this referee, and maybe I'm giving him too much credit, he lunged himself into the freaking, into the guardrail. Like I would not be surprised if he actually did hurt himself when he went down. So Drew hits the Claymore. He's got him covered. And then what happens? And he already hit one earlier. And then what happens is CM Punk, somebody runs in, the camera's on the floor, and you see somebody run to the side of the camera, and if you look at the shoes he was wearing the Chicago Air Jordans, the red and blues, and you see like the gray hair, facial hair, but the black, it's CM, and it was CM Punk. But the way the camera did it was awesome. So Punk counts 2 and then stops. Damian does not kick out, by the way. Drew looks up and sees Punk. This was phenomenal stuff, bro. Phenomenal finish, dude. Phenomenal finish, man. So Drew McIntyre backs Punk up into this corner, and Punk hits him low to save himself, and then he gets hit with the big choke slam. And it's a 1-2-3. And Damian Priest retains. I was not expecting this. I know a lot of people thought that Punk would screw Drew, but like I told you, I thought it was going to happen at SummerSlam. I thought I had it. I thought I was smarter than the average bear by saying that. And I guess not. Where do we go from here? I think Drew and Punk, their first of probably a series of matches, will probably happen at SummerSlam, I would assume, because Punk should be ready by then. And it looks like Priest and Gunther are going to be the ones going at it at SummerSlam. I would assume by that point, Priest would be a babyface. I think Judgment Day will eventually turn on him. If it's not that match, it's shortly after, because I see him being a big face down the road. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see. He did a great job here. He was, played a great heel in this crowd. The crowd was behind Drew. I mean, they had this little thing that counted like the amps of the loudness, and it was over 100. Like Drew, I feel bad for those fans though, because Drew came into this place a hero. Drew came into this place more over than almost any. Like this was guys. When you think about the biggest pops of this year. You got like Cody, you got Punk, you got Roman Reigns a couple times, The Rock, right? Sami Zayn in Montreal. Like there's a few, right? This was right up there. And those people, man, those poor people, man, they didn't get what they wanted. They thought it was going to be their night. Wrestling is great when it kind of can fuck with you a little bit and tease you a little bit. When it starts to do it kind of, like what Vince McMahon used to do where they almost hate you, that's different. But oh, man. Fun pay-per-view. Very, very fun pay-per-view. I enjoyed that show a lot, yo. I really had a good time with that show. And next up is Money in the Bank, which is going to be next month in Canada. We'll see. We'll see. I have no prediction yet for who's going to win Money in the Bank. We'll see. We'll see who qualifies. But Monday night, Uncle Howdy debuts. And, yeah. Look, it's going to be weird. Like, I'm happy for Bo Dallas. Don't get me wrong. And I'm happy Alexa Bliss and Dexter Lumis and all the people who are going to be in that group. I'm happy for them, okay? But it's one of those things where it's weird to me because this whole Uncle Howdy thing was supposed to be working off of the Fiend, and this is still technically a Bray Wyatt story, even if he's not around to write the final chapters of it. But don't you think it's a little weird though that they're continuing a gimmick that started with Bray Wyatt, that started with his character, without properly, like, properly bridging it. They could still bridge it, but you understand what I'm saying? Like, the unfortunate truth is that Wyndham Rotuna's longer with us, and as much as I would have loved to have seen this with him there, can you imagine if he wasn't dead, if he wasn't, no longer with us, if he was still alive? And can you imagine, like, how awesome it would be if, after he got over his illnesses, like, Uncle Howdy debuted first and then the Fiend came after, like, to get his revenge or whatever, like something like that, right? We're not going to get that, man. Like, we're not going to get that. Like, the Fiend is, and if they do involve the Fiend, it would be Bo Dallas playing the Fiend, which he has done before, to trick people and whatnot. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. They do have a leftover Fiend costume that was made for Bray Wyatt's return, but he unfortunately is no longer with us. So I will be thinking of Bray when I see the segment. I just hope it works this time. We'll see. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Clash at the Castle. A fun time with some cool surprises. I enjoyed. Have a good one. Take care.